He has completed cosmonaut training as a space engineer, participated in multiple analog training missions, and flown a variety of aircraft and missions as an active flight engineer in the Italian Air Force.
Our third crew member for today's mission is Mission Specialist Alper Izirace. Alper is the first Turkish astronaut to go to space. With 15 years of experience across a myriad of aircraft for the Turkish Air Force, Izirace got his start in the Air Force Academy in Istanbul, Turkey, and earned a master's degree from the U.S. Air Force Institute of Technology. He then flew as a commercial airline captain for several years before returning to duty in the Turkish Air Force.
And finally, we have Mission Specialist
Hello,
Marcus
everyone.
Blunt,
Welcome
a
this
lieutenant
morning.
colonel
We
in
are
the
close
Swedish Air
to
Force.
docking here.
In November of 2022, Marcus was selected by the European Space Agency as an astronaut reserve. However, with the AX-3 mission, he now becomes the first project astronaut in ESA's history, a new designation within their ranks. So, if you couldn't tell by
T-Tones, what's up, buddy? How are you doing?
This is really an incredible
How you doing, buddy?
crew. They are so well prepared for space flight, even though only one of them has been to space before. They're all really well trained.
How are you doing?
All these years of experience really speak for themselves.
It really does, and it really just shows the breadth and caliber of this crew and how prepared they are.
SpaceX is busy. You can see Mission Control at Hawthorne, California. They're up on the top left.
With that, they're helping to expand
Demented's in here. Preacher should be coming in here soon. How's it going? Good,
all
good.
Right, now let's talk a little bit about how they got to this point today.
Again, Preacher's in here. Here's Preacher. So they're about 80 kilometers away. They're about 80 kilometers away. We just had some visual of them at the International Space Station here.
Their helicopter and flew to their launch pad. You can see them coming over the Cape right there and enjoying the trip, I think, looking at their vehicle for the first time.
So fun.
Yeah, I can't imagine what's going through their minds right now. You can see a mix of just pure joy and real solemnness as they get to greet their families and wave goodbye to them before suiting up in the LLF. And that's really where we hand over to SpaceX.
I love that they were able to fly around the launch pad before getting turned over to the SpaceX crew, which is what we see here. We put them in the Teslas and we drive them over to the Falcon Support Building, which is where our suit-up room is located. And here we see them walking out of that building after completing suit-up. This is a nice moment here where we get to really see them as their crew on launch day for the first time.
I gotta say, live view from the space station here.
Half-mile distance from.
So this is a live view from the International Space Station, just one of the many views.
These Teslas are actually outfitted with cooling systems within it. So the umbilical cord that they plug into while they're in Dragon, they also get to plug in here as well to help keep some cool air flowing through the suits during this short drive. They then get out of the vehicles. Wow, big smile there. And coming up is one of my favorite moments of launch day. Just this view that they get, and it's the first opportunity that they have to see the vehicle up close on the day that they're going to ride that vehicle into space.
You're right, and you can see the crew there so happy. Commander Michael Lopez Alegria and pilot Walter Villaday.
We got him.
Our mission specialist Alper and Marcus just enjoying their walk down to their vehicle.
We got the capsule. We got
in.
Preacher, what's up, buddy? You've been a member for 3 months. Thank you, Preacher. One of the first ones to become a channel member here on the Austin Air Show. Thank you.
Such a beautiful
guys, as you can see here, we do have the capsule on camera.
It's a historic
and this was the launch here just a couple days ago. That was the launch there from Cape Canaveral, Florida. As you guys can see,
human spaceflight continue from.
It was a beautiful launch, but we do have Crew Dragon. You can see it in the screen. It's white on white.
Afterward, we were very fortunate, actually. About an hour.
Mission Control here appears that they're getting some more water. They're getting ready here.
Relaxed communications with them. Here you see their first on-orbit event. It was so cool.
And the capsule is now leaving the screen right now as they start to come on in.
And they got to relay some
so we'll continue to monitor them there on that.
Who, for those of you that might be unaware, this is actually his second time flying in our Dragon spacecraft. So he is the founding member of our Frequent Flyer Club. But during this on-orbit event, he noted that
there's lots of storms where the space station is above.
The first time he flew.
This is another live view from the International Space Station.
And something that I really appreciated was that he still noted.
And this is live. I'm giving you guys some live views here. It's 4:30 in the morning.
Where, you know, if you ride a roller coaster so many times, you might, I don't know. I always kind of wondered, does
it still feel the same?
Yeah. And because we have so many people that fly on Dragon that have gone to space before, but in a different
Mission
vehicle.
Control here in Hawthorne, California.
Well, what about somebody that flies in Dragon more than once? What is their experience like?
Yeah, and he said it's never a dull moment.
Yeah.
Like, still.
So here we have some more views
of
the Dragon
we got
spacecraft. This is Dragon Freedom approaching the International Space
Station.
Got
another view here.
This is... Okay. I love these views because right now it seems pretty far away.
There we go.
Before you know it, you're going to look up and we're going to see Dragon, and it's just going to be like, oh, wait, it's knocking on the door to, you know, get to the space station.
Here we go, guys. We got some live views here. This is coming courtesy of NASA. This video is coming courtesy of NASA. Crew Dragon is entering where the live docking portion is on your screen. It's now coming back up here. Again, there is 4 astronauts in that capsule right there.
Are actually continually adjusting
4 astronauts in the capsule
because they're going 17,500 miles per hour here, and Dragon is coming closer, and so they have to keep readjusting the camera to make sure that it stays in view. So that's why it floats out of the frame and then comes back in.
We can see that the beginning of the hatch is open there for the nose cone where they will begin to dock here.
Are there inside that
they
capsule?
will begin to dock.
The capsule from the top down. So we're actually looking straight into the forward hatch. This is the hatch that will be utilized to dock with the space station. And then there's a great view here. The pointy thing kind of at the top there, or what looks like the top to us, that is the nose cone. So that's why there's a bit of an asymmetrical shape from where we're looking, is because the nose cone actually, after they get on orbit, we open the nose cone to expose the docking mechanism in the forward hatch. So that's why it's a little bit asymmetrical from this particular view. But all 4 crew members are currently strapped into their seats. We're going to be stepping into some leak checks as they recently donned or put on their spacesuits. We're going to perform those leak checks. As Gary said, we have quite a bit of time here before we move into the mid-course maneuver and eventually hit waypoint 0. So, excuse me. But the crew, they put their suits back on, they're in their seats, and we will perform those leak checks just to make sure
Crew Dragon,
that
we got them.
Zippers are pulled up into where they need to be to make sure the visors are clicking shut and then the locked position, really just to make sure that the crew put their suits on the right way. That's important because we do put the suit on whenever we're entering more dynamic phases of flight.
Right, and that process you just mentioned, Kate, right, that's a huge part of their training, their pre-flight training to get them to this point. They know what to expect to run this procedure while they're on orbit, and so that's going to be something that they don those suits, they do some nominal checkouts, and they run that procedure to make sure they're doing good.
They have trained for that, but of course, trying to get dressed in space
completely different.
would be a little different than training here. But you're absolutely right, and the crew is trained to assist their other crew members in making sure that all those things are in the right places before they hop back into their seats and put their seat belts, or really their safety harnesses. They're a bit more complex than a seat belt, but so we know that they do go through that training, but it's always different when in space. So speaking of training, as Dragon, as you can see here, actually it looks like it may have floated out of view again, but it'll come back. As Dragon continues its approach, let's talk a bit more about that preparation that the crew went through in order to be ready for this mission.
The space shuttle was a lot more interesting there, Preacher, but mind you, this is all automated. Space shuttle, they took manual control to do it. This is all automated, and they use AI to figure out everything. It's cool as heck.
Science and outreach activities that they'll be conducting while in space. So you can see here the crew training here at our Hawthorne training centers to prepare for their mission. Our teams here at SpaceX spent the last several months teaching the crew about orbital mechanics, how to live in microgravity, and running simulations of full missions from inside our Dragon training vehicles like the one you see here. The training program includes nearly 100 different lessons covering all aspects of the flight. The team also spent time at the launch pad, as well as in the suit-up room, and working through emergency procedures that would be necessary in the unlikely of a pad abort scenario.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of extensive training just for the vehicle alone, in addition to some other systems. But crew also spent extensive amounts of time in historic Building 9 at the Johnson Space Center that you can see there, learning from certified instructors on all critical systems necessary to ensure a successful stay aboard the orbiting lab. The team even prepared for unlikely emergencies and learned how to provide first aid in a microgravity environment. Additionally, they learned how to prepare food and make selections for their meals, as well as learned how mission control operates to better ensure mission success during their flight. They also had a chance to familiarize themselves with the gear that will enable them to document their trip, their research, and help them connect with those back here on Earth during their outreach events. Additionally, ESA and JAXA also play a critical role in cruise training. Each module has its own nuances, so gaining insight into the specialties of their racks and systems is necessary, especially for this particular mission. Extensive training on station navigation, on-orbit familiarization, emergency response scenarios, and repetition of walking through processes and procedures all help ensure that crew maximizes every second that they have during their flight. Simulating science research, operations, and even discussing how to sleep in space are all necessary lessons on the path to mission readiness. And with that, the National Outdoor Leadership School, or NOLS, provides a unique Earth-based experience for many astronauts before they fly. This is really a bonding experience for crew, which I just love. It can't be overstated how much teamwork factors into every aspect of their mission. And this training in particular really aims to thoroughly establish that between the crew. Here they focus on survival skills, resilience, leadership, followership, and overall teamwork to ensure they really are more than just passengers on the same rocket. The camping and outdoor adventure provides a solid foundation for the team to build on throughout their training. Knowles was definitely a highlight of this crew's prep and training, and you can hear it in their voices and see it in their faces when they speak about each other, that they really feel like a family after this, and that's a critical component to build that trust between crew members.
They're searching for Dragon.
Truly experience flying into space until
they
you
got
fly
Dragon.
into space.
Got Dragon.
But some really unique tools have been developed on Earth to provide
got tracking on the crew.
Altitude chambers can challenge the body with oxygen deprivation in a controlled and safe manner. And human-sized centrifuges send the crew members for a spin to simulate the G-forces that will be experienced by the body during launch and re-entry. It can be a bit nauseating at times, but it does help the crew know exactly what to expect and be as prepared as possible for what launch day holds. Now, at the end of it all, there's a mission patch celebration of celebrating their training. And this has been a tradition.
It's a very slow process there.
Crew gets to hang their
you don't want to just because then you're going to overshoot and then you're backtracking. The slower you go, the more control you have. It's getting real close now. It's getting very, very, very close here, guys.
Celebration that help everyone pause.
Hopefully, it has no issues with the mating.
Achieved every day by all of these teams. No matter how many patches join a canvas like that one, each one is incredibly special because of the people who make it possible. The crew, and those here on Earth supporting each mission.
Yeah, and this here is Crew Dragon, Axiom 3.
To celebrate that. So you were talking about Houston. Actually, let's go back over to Gary Johnson, who is at Houston.
We're going to have a live view coming out of NASA.
Johnson Space Center.
NASA Mission Control is on the right side. As you guys can see, we have access to their live media feed, which is up behind them to the left. That's the one that we have as well.
So we're standing by as a very short burn.
Yeah, and he is there. Yep, and we have our own view of this. You guys can see we
make sure that we are right on track.
We're a little bit ahead of them.
And we're hearing good call-outs. Trajectory has converged onto waypoint 0.
So she is coming on up. Was that light? It's blinking there.
They're analyzing just to confirm, but we are right on track for hitting that milestone. We have a clock on the board here counting down a little less than 20 minutes, and we're expected to arrive.
About 20 minutes till docking, I believe, is what this is. About 20 minutes till docking. Look at this, guys. Look at this beautiful view.
Getting beautiful views of the Dragon capsule. Since we last talked from Houston, we're now
beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
From our original from our original distance. We checked in last at 4 kilometers. We're now just a little bit more than 1 kilometer away.
Absolutely just beautiful here, guys.
Dragon making its slow and methodical approach to the International Space Station.
Yes, right gotta be very slow with this.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop. Nominal mid-course maneuver complete, and the trajectory has converged on waypoint 0.
I love that Quantar beep.
Kelly, thanks.
Okay, now they are coming up on waypoint 0.
From the SpaceX mission control teams over in Hawthorne, crew operations resource engineer, the voice that you're hearing from Hawthorne to the Dragon crew, confirming that good mid-course maneuver. Again, that's just a way to make sure
waypoint 0, they are right there. They're coming into the keep out sphere.
All the burns that have happened over the past couple of days to get us to this moment. Approach initiation starting very shortly after.
They are going to be within 400 meters.
Mid-course maneuver is about the halfway point, just to get us right to where that waypoint 0 is. That 400 meters that you're seeing is directly below the International Space Station. You can see 2 zones surrounding the International Space Station, one being the approach ellipsoid, the other being the keep-out sphere. Each with their own set of flight rules, but once we reach waypoint 0, we'll swing out right in front of the International Space Station, just outside of that keep-out sphere, not entering until we get the all-clear. Now, the waypoint 1 is the next milestone, and it takes us immediately in front of the International Space Station. It still remains outside of the keep-out sphere until the teams assess the vehicle and its performance and trajectory and do a go, no-go poll to say, yes, we are good to move inside the keep-out sphere.
Okay, right now we don't have any views from the International Space Station. It's in a radio blackout zone right now.
Intermittent gaps in our video. But the flight control teams have done a good job of securing pretty continuous coverage.
Yeah, you got
duration of our coverage from
Station Houston on the big loop for Laurel and approach monitoring.
On 2.
Dragon range is approximately 1,000 meters. Monitor long-range approach per steps 1 to 4 in 1.102. Dragon approach and retreat monitoring. ISS crew is now primed for vehicle approach monitoring.
Copy, ISS is prime, and we're stepping into the procedure.
Okay, we got feedback. They've connected to a new antenna array.
What you heard was from here in Mission Control Houston. The flight control.
Houston is on the right. SpaceX Hawthorne is on the left.
Screen, William Vu, the Capcom.
This is NASA.
Houston and the voice of Mission Control, relaying up to the International Space Station team.
The voice of Mission Control.
It's NASA astronauts Laurel O'Hara and Jasmine Mogbelli that are working to monitor the approach.
Capcom is the guy in the gray suit there, and the flight director was in the foreground here.
Flight director Judd
currently searching for Crew Dragon. We got Crew Dragon. Crew Dragon.
Awaiting the AX-3 crew's arrival.
Yes, that is a light. I can't confirm that is the docking light.
And attitude is as expected. Dragon is facing us.
Houston copies.
And we got Crew Dragon here.
Tally ho from the crew aboard the International Space Station. Laurel O'Hara confirming she has visuals of the Dragon Freedom as it is now inside 1 kilometer from the International Space Station.
They are within 1 kilometer, guys. That they are within less than probably 3/4 of a mile.
Right where we need to be.
Look at the great detail here, guys.
0 in almost exactly 15 minutes from now. Again, waypoint 0 being 400 meters directly below.
Here we go, guys.
Once meeting that point, we can expect very likely to proceed past that waypoint and swing out in front of the station to converge with the docking axis. From there, we'll make a slow and methodical approach inwards to dock with the very forward port of the International Space Station.
That's absolutely fantastic here, guys. That is amazing.
International Space Station and Dragon Freedom are currently flying 264 statute miles over the South Indian Ocean, just east off the coast of Madagascar.
Let's see if I can maybe. Yes, it is off the coast of Madagascar right now.
We can expect to be in an orbital daytime for quite some time here. Of course, it being the middle of the night U.S.
This
time.
is where the space station is right now, guys, off the coast of Madagascar. It's going to be coming over Asia.
To see continuous sun
cutting back,
illuminating the Dragon Capsule and the International Space Station. Sun may
look how close it is, guys. Look how close it is.
A.M. Central Time. But for now, we can see a lot of the features.
We may have an outage of video.
Again, those intermittent loss of comms, those are very much expected throughout our coverage today. It's tracking and data relay satellites. These are geosynchronous satellites that communicate with
here we go.
These low Earth orbit spacecraft. Very short loss of signal. We regained it now and should maintain it for at least through the most remainder of our sunlight. Again, sun setting probably around 4:09 a.m. is the predicted sunset. We'll start seeing the views of Dragon Freedom and the AX-3 crew inside getting a little bit dimmer, but for now we can enjoy the International Space Station
down there.
And Dragon flying over the Indian Ocean. We're seeing features of the Dragon spacecraft from here. On the very forward end, you can see that nose cone pointing straight towards the International Space Station, guidance, navigation, and control equipment facing right towards there, and there is a communications link called C2V2, Common Communications for Visiting Vehicles, relaying communications in between the two flying spacecraft. And of course, relaying them down to the flight control teams you see.
Oh, look at that. They're looking to make sure that the docking looks great. Look at that.
Getting even closer now, we're seeing the flashing docking light. That's in the very center.
The beacon of the exact center.
Seeing features of the soft capture ring, the gray center that's around the middle there. That'll be the soft capture ring. As we start getting even closer to the International Space Station, that soft capture ring will extend and prepare for a nice cushy contact with the International Space Station. It's that soft capture ring that allows for a little bit of cushion and then retracts to bring the Dragon in closer with the International Docking Adapter for a hard mate.
That's beautiful.
There are 12 latches.
There they are.
Now start flying over a ground station to provide views from the Dragon itself. We got just a glimpse of the crew inside and are now seeing what the International Space Station looks like from Dragon Freedom. We're just a little over 600 meters from the International Space Station. Eyes on both sides. We have the Dragon looking at the International Space Station and the Space Station looking at
SpaceX on the big loop. Ground has pulled go for approach 0, and we will be enabling the maneuver shortly.
So they review
at 09:58, and a reminder that Dragon will continue approach through waypoint 1 towards waypoint 2 without stopping.
Okay, so they got permission to dock. Everything looks good for docking.
SpaceX Freedom, we copy all.
Excellent news from the flight control teams. Teams have pulled go to past several of the upcoming waypoints. We are talking about waypoint 0 being 400 meters right below the International Space Station. You can hear flight control teams pulled go to pass
3 space agencies right now talking to one another to make this happen. We have NASA, we have SpaceX, and we have Axiom. All 3 mission controls are working together to get this in there.
So right when we reach that 400-meter mark, we're going to swing right out in front of the International Space Station to that 220-meter mark, and then slowly and methodically start pushing in. Waypoint 2 is only 20 meters away from the International Space Station. A commanded hold can be issued if necessary. However, there is another scenario where the Dragon will simply pause for just a few seconds to switch modes to approach from Waypoint 2. So it'll just pause for maybe about 30 seconds before proceeding in. But again, flight control teams will assess Dragon's approach and performance along the way and does have the ability to command a hold at 20 meters just to wait and make sure conditions and systems are good before proceeding in for that docking. So far, so good, though. We're tracking a trajectory that takes us in for that expected docking time of 4:40 a.m. Central Time, a little less than an hour from now. Dragon continuing to fly over the Indian Ocean, still seeing those features. You can see the nose cone deployed. This is a feature of Dragon that's deployed very quickly after spacecraft separation from the Falcon 9 rocket. You can sort of see it swung out. When it does so, it exposes the docking ring and the docking light, which you see flashing, but one of the primary reasons it needs to unfold are those 4 forward bulkhead Dracos. Those Draco thrusters provide much of the force needed in those initial phasing burns that we discussed a little earlier, those 5 major burns that bring Dragon incrementally closer to the International Space Station. Forward bulkhead Dracos have done their job for the approach and rendezvous. We'll see them again when Dragon leaves the International Space Station, and the forward bulkhead Dracos are used for a very significant maneuver, the deorbit burn. But for now, we'll use the service section Dracos for the upcoming maneuvers, including the approach 0, which is the maneuver right at the waypoint 0 mark, 400 meters below the station, and approach 1. That takes us right in front of the docking axis inwards to make contact with the International Space Station. Flight control teams working in tandem together. You're seeing the teams over in Hawthorne, monitoring Dragon's performance, working with the crew inside. Great views of the International Space Station, only 500 meters away at this point, and you can start seeing the features that make it seem as though the Dragon is right underneath. We're almost there, about 7 minutes away from waypoint 0. This is about what 500 meters looks like.
Wow.
Right now we're over the North Indian Ocean. We're about to cross the southern border of India here soon. Still in an orbital daylight, expecting that sunset in a little less than 20 minutes. The crew inside Dragon monitoring the performance. You can see in the middle screen there, that point at the very bottom. That's the Dragon spacecraft, and they're trying to meet with that point right below the space station. And you can see what the maneuver is about to do. It's about to swing it right at that point, right in front of the docking axis. The cone you see in the circle in the middle of that screen. Features of the International Space Station becoming a bit more prominent. The solar arrays on both wings of the space station, to the left and to the right. The forward port, where Dragon Freedom and the Axiom crew will be docking, is at the very tip of this view here. That is the Node 2 forward port, International Docking Adapter. Dragon, again, will swing from this view, from the bottom, right out in front to meet with the docking axis. Commander Michael Lopez Alegria on the left of your screen, one of the 4 crew members inside Dragon Freedom, suited up, ready to monitor these operations. Pilot Walter Villaday to the right. Alper Gezerachi is also a mission specialist, as well as Marcus Want. 4 crew members make up the Axiom Mission 3 crew, headed to the International Space Station for a 14-day stay.
Just 2-week vacation is all they're doing there.
Counting down 5 minutes to waypoint 0. 3:58 is the approximate time of executing that approach maneuver. Again, it's the service section Dracos on the outside of the Dragon spacecraft that will take it, that will be fired and make sure that the Dragon converges to waypoint 1, again, right in front of the International Space Station.
Papa, what's up, buddy? How are you, bud?
3.5 minutes to approach 0. That's the waypoint marker. We're getting views, continuing to get views from the ground stations, providing that video from the Dragon spacecraft, and of course continuing to get great views from the International Space Station. We're now flying over India. Right there, you're seeing the southern coast of India. Dragon and International Space Station flying.
We see range less than 400 meters and attitude as expected.
Houston copies.
As astronaut Laurel O'Hara confirming the data that she's seeing, again, from inside the International Space Station, she and Jasmine Mogbelli, another NASA astronaut, monitoring Dragon's approach to the International Space Station, confirming the data that they're seeing on their screen.
You can see it slowly starting to make its way even further with the camera zoomed out. We do have some up-close views here of it. Is it real? Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, so we have the Crew Dragon there, Axiom. They are docking. They're within probably a half-mile of the International Space Station. They're going to be docking soon.
The International Space Station continuing to track Dragon Freedom. Still getting fantastic views as Dragon and International Space Station are flying over India. Dragon is inside 400 meters, just waiting for confirmation of that waypoint 0 and approach 0 maneuver. Both vehicles flying at 17,500 miles per hour.
17,500 miles per hour. That's insane. We got Crew Dragon here, guys. Look at that.
And we're just seconds away from converging on waypoint 0, standing by for that approach maneuver. And confirmed, we're in approach 0 now. Service section Dracos are firing, standing by for the performance of that approach maneuver.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop. Approach 0 has started and the trajectory has converged on waypoint 1. You can expect arrival at waypoint 1 at 1025 UTC.
ISS, Freedom, we copy.
And with that, the teams have confirmed a good approach 0. That was a good burn, and we're converged onto the next waypoint, waypoint 1, being 220 meters right in front of the International Space Station. The read from the crew operations resource engineer to the crew aboard Dragon Freedom confirms that we're looking at 4:25 a.m. Central Time for that expected arrival time at waypoint 1. Again, the teams have polled a go, no-go for passing those two waypoints, waypoint 0 and waypoint 1. So we'll see a maneuver very similar to what we've seen for waypoint 0.
You got Dragon up there.
That waypoint,
over the mountains.
The maneuver will be immediately executed. No hold is expected. However, teams will continue to monitor their performance. Everything's looking good so far. With that, we're just about 25 minutes away from that waypoint 0. So why don't we toss it back over to Hawthorne and check in with the teams over there.
Which switches you talking about?
Thanks, Gary. For those of you that have just recently joined, we are tracking the approach and docking
of
Dragon with the AX-3
going to be installing a dual 20 amp circuit, and my issue is I've never messed with the electrical box before. I know what I'm doing. My dad was a commercial electrician, but like I've never taken the panel cover off and actually worked in. I know not to be stupid. It's just I'm like, ugh.
Heading toward the 220-meter mark, waypoint 1. And as Gary reported earlier, the teams polled yes to not have to stop at either of those waypoints. Those are opportunities for us, if needed, where we can stop there and reset and do whatever course corrections are necessary. But good news, we're able to cruise right through waypoint 0, which is what just happened.
Like network switches?
We're going to be able to go straight through waypoint 1, which, as I mentioned, is about 220 meters away.
I've been so busy. I got so much stuff going on.
They're cruising this morning, which
I literally have so much shit that goes on in day in, day out.
36 hours or so since they lifted off.
Insane.
Gosh, I guess that was not yesterday, but the day before.
You can see the shadow.
They lifted off at 4:49 p.m. Eastern
Never mind,
time.
That's dirt.
And so yeah, about 36 hours they've been in Dragon, and I'm sure that they are very much looking forward to beginning all the science and experiments and everything that they are about to embark on for about the next 2 weeks or so.
You're absolutely right, Kate. I mean, this crew is ready with this mission, and as you mentioned, right, they're ready to do the science and the research, and we know how core that is to this mission, these particular objectives.
And
you really can't talk about spaceflight, human spaceflight missions without talking about mission patches.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely.
Right. These mission patches are left behind as this lasting reminder of what occurred on the mission and what the crew is doing, and they end up everywhere, and they're definitely in that vehicle.
Oh, yeah.
And there's going to be more. There's plenty on the International Space Station, and we have them all over our laptops and everywhere. So it's a really big deal for crew to be involved in designing that patch because it's such a lasting mark of their dedication and their hard work. So you'll often find a lot of the significance for them personally and the nations that they represent. So let's take a look at the AX-3 mission patch now. As you can see, their names, a star, and unique graphics for each nation are featured to highlight all 4 astronauts. With the commander, MLA, Michael Lopez Alegria, holding dual citizenship, the 5 national flags mark the top edge.
Minus that.
The destination, the International Space Station.
It's just there are some outages every now and then when it comes to
all 4 of them are pilots, and that
this.
image of the
that's just part of the name of the game.
It's very cool.
Yeah, I love that. On the bottom, you see the phrase plus ultra in Latin, which means further beyond, and this is the mission's motto. So all of this together builds on the patch's theme of exploration and its slogan, exploring further without borders.
I love how each patch is personalized to the crew. It's not just about designing something that looks cool, right? Of course, everybody wants cool mission patches, but I just really appreciate when there's so much thought
going on. But we do have
the
this
design.
view here.
Yeah, it's an opportunity for crew to
really think about like, why are we doing
right
now,
and what does this mean to us together? And you can see that in the AX-3 patch. You can see it in all mission patches. That's what you hope to get out of it.
Yeah. And like you mentioned, the reflection of it, they're all pilots. I just love that cohesiveness reflected among them. And in line with cohesiveness, there
sure it's not a driver issue. Could always be a driver-related issue, honestly.
We can see here on our screen, they are getting closer to the International Space Station, like we mentioned before. They passed waypoint 0, which is 420 100 meters away, so they are getting closer. But the teams all around the globe that are supporting this mission, there are critical positions in each of those places. So here at SpaceX Mission Control, or MCCX, that's the view that you see there on your screen. This is the control center we have here at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. We have a position called CORE, which is the Crew Operations Resource Engineer. That is the voice of communication to the, actually there you see there, this is our core for today. That is Celie Grossman, and she is the primary voice in communicating, really the only voice in communicating from SpaceX.
Okay, we're not going in.
What
you do to it, buddy?
This position is held all through all these dynamic phases of flight. It's very similar to Capcom at Mission Control Houston, which stands for Capsule Communicator. That is basically ground to ISS. Also over at Houston Space Center, we have the flight director that sits next to Capcom. I actually hear a live view of our flight control center. Of the Flight Control Center at Mission Control Houston. This is where Gary is reporting from.
They are like perched at their desk. They are like,
we go back to him.
What is going on with our space station?
The flight director is there next to Capcom, and that person leads the team through.
Copy, Laurel. We'd like for you to kill it and restart it.
I think they are hoping to get this done before sunset. Because if sunset hits, it's like, ugh. You don't get the best effect.
As I was mentioning, next to Capcom is the flight director. That's the individual that leads the team through major milestones.
Oh, it came that
there's
way.
Also
Gotcha,
gotcha. Attitude,
wasn't sure there.
And control.
Wasn't sure where you were going with that, bud.
They handle controls, attitude, orientation of the ISS. There's also VVO, the Visiting Vehicle Officer.
How can we restart it?
Holy hell, that guy is getting up.
Checking. Laurel, we're going to take that one for the ground. So stand by.
Did you, Preacher? Nice. Nice.
So I believe that was Capcom. As I mentioned before, that is the primary voice from Johnson Space Center here, Houston Mission Control to station. And then, of course, there's the flight surgeon, keep continuing to talk about these key roles. Flight surgeon, it's basically, the person that the crew regularly speaks to for scheduled chances of medical conferences. So this is a standard part of spaceflight where we're checking in on the crew and making sure that they're feeling well, and if they're not, assisting them to make them feel better.
Yeah, exactly right, Kate. And you might have heard us pausing there a few times, right? And that's
the new M3.
Work with exactly what you mentioned.
Nice,
right? It's
nice.
a single point of communication talking to crews.
Yeah, the IMAX are beautiful. They really are beautiful.
And it's important.
I wouldn't mind a Mac Studio.
Disciplines like Capcom
would not mind one of those.
Voice, so that crew and ground teams can work very efficiently together. Without that, it wouldn't be as smooth as it is. And as we know, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And
yep, we are now heading into...
And that's part of what we're looking at today is watching this vehicle approach station.
We're heading into nighttime up in space right now.
First
one. Oh, okay. A little bit of a learning curve, but they're nice. Especially depending on what display... Well, the iMac display is built in, that's right.
Well,
it's beautiful.
MCCA is officially certified control center, joining the large network of other control centers supporting the ISS from all over the world. From this secure facility, teams have live access to voice, video, and data from the ISS and can work alongside their NASA counterparts and SpaceX counterparts to run on-orbit operations and monitor every aspect of the mission in real time, 24/7, for the duration of the crew's mission. And similar to like what you were mentioning, Kate, of having a single point inside these control rooms for Axiom, for MCCA, that room is led by Axel, or Axiom Operations Lead. And around the room that you see, positioned around Axel, are other supporting flight controller positions, each responsible for different aspects of mission support. For Axiom, that includes research, communications, medical,
awesome
integration and stowage,
Glad you
and
like
timeline
it.
operations. So when you put all this together,
I
this
wonder
is
who
really
that girl is on the front.
in terms of getting to low Earth orbit and sustaining low Earth orbit, because it's the 12th ground segment partner for the ISS program. And with this facility, we're providing our customers and the global community a front row seat to the work being done on station.
So you were talking about comms. I just, like, for those that might not be familiar, just a quick rundown of what that is that we're hearing. We often start with the Quindar tone, which is that unmistakably unique sound. Yeah. And so that is the indicator that some sort of comms is going to occur. So we try to really listen for that. And as soon as we hear it, we try to go quiet to make room for those comms. You then also hear something like Dragon Houston on the big loop.
Right.
So that is the standard protocol of basically saying, this is the person I'm calling. I'm calling from this place on whatever net it is. So in that case, it would be a flight controller, or in that case, in the example I gave, forgive me, it is 2:10 in the morning here, so my brain might be a little slow, but it is, if I would be Capcom in Houston, I would say Dragon Houston on the big net, basically saying, hey Dragon, I'm trying to get a hold of you. Who I am, I'm in Houston, and what net we're talking on. So a little bit of clarification there on why you don't just hear the Quindar tone and then someone saying, hey, we have something floating around in the cabin, or that kind of thing.
Yeah, and all of these things for supporting missions like this, it's really important for everybody to kind of know what role they play when. And I think that's one of the things that I absolutely love about these kind of dynamic operations, right? It's, as we mentioned, if you move slow, you move smooth, and if you move smooth, you move fast. And having procedures to help you do that in a training that backs everybody up, right? It's not just crew that trains for these missions; it's all of those flight controllers that we mentioned in Houston, in SpaceX, at Axiom. All of those flight controllers need to know what role they play and when they play it.
Absolutely.
And knowing that allows you to understand, okay, at this critical moment in this flight path, it's my role to kind of lead the team. It's my role to do the communication. And now it's my role to follow on the team. And I think that's just absolutely amazing part of spaceflight.
So in the capsule, our four-person crew of Axiom-3, they are on their way to the International Space Station. We are coming up to waypoint 1, which is 220 meters away from the station. The crew are seated. They are buckled in. They have their suits on. They've gone through... Actually, I'm not sure if they have completed the leak check yet. I'll check on that. But they will be completing a leak check on the spacesuit. I am hearing that they did complete that leak check and it was successful, so that's good news. But those spacesuits are really important. We heard us mention before that we have the crew wear them during the more dynamic phases of flight, and that's because those suits protect the crew from depressurization events. The suit inflates with nitrox, which is a nitrogen-oxygen mixture, and they are flame resistant. So cool visual here kind of illustrating it. They are custom to each astronaut. It's a single-piece suit. The helmets, which are actually 3D printed, are also, I would love to put one of these on one day. They look so cool. They also, of course, have boots and gloves. Those are all attached. They also have a quick disconnect, or a QD, which is located on the right thigh umbilical. That is what provides that nitrox airflow, as well as where the electronics are connected. And that is important because within the helmet, there is a mounted mic as well as their in-ear speakers. So that's where all of that communications connections occur, is that umbilical. We were talking about training before and how they practice suiting up, although we mentioned suiting up in space would be a little bit different, but they are able to actually suit up in less than 15 minutes.
Nice laptop, yes.
I would feel like, I think about when I'm getting dressed to go skiing, it definitely takes me longer than 15 minutes to get dressed.
The challenge is set.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the crew practices that. This suit is an IVA, or intravehicular activity suit, meaning it's designed for use only inside of Dragon. The suits will stay on Dragon while the crew is living on the International Space Station. the suits that they will use for their extravehicular activity, or EVAs, aka spacewalks, there are designated suits for those EVAs, known as EVA suits. And the amount of time that they spend in suits varies. As we mentioned before, they wear them during launch, but then whenever we did the on-orbit event with the crew the day before yesterday, an hour and a half after they lifted off, we had an opportunity to chat with them, and they had already taken their suits off and were in their comfort garments. So ultimately, they have to take everything they need with them in order to be fully self-contained in the Dragon. And yeah, ultimately speaking, the suits are not only do they look cool, they are super functional, and most importantly, they are safe. So yeah, it's nice to see. We don't have the view at the moment. As we mentioned, we're going to lose the views here and there. So when we have the view, we'll be sure to bring it back. The view of hopefully all four of them seated in their seats, and we'll be able to see those suits in action. So with that being said, let's actually check back in with Gary over in Houston for the latest progress with the approach to the International Space Station.
Hey, thank you, Kate. Thank you, John. Yeah, we're monitoring inside 10 minutes from reaching that waypoint 1. Now, the teams in Hawthorne and in Houston are currently talking through some options. We talked about passing that waypoint 1. That's still part of the plan, but right now we're under active discussions to potentially hold outside of the keep out sphere. Now, that waypoint 1 is 220 meters in front of the docking access. About 180 meters is right at the cusp of that keep out sphere. The teams may elect to command a hold right around that area just to assess that everything's in tip-top shape before they proceed. So again, we're tracking inside 10 minutes, about 9 minutes from reaching that waypoint 1. The plan is to execute the approach 1 maneuver. That's just firing the Draco thrusters to proceed into the docking axis. But instead of crossing into the keep out sphere, we'll go ahead and command a hold at about 180 meters. So we're still following along, still gathering the data. Teams are still discussing, but we are good to proceed past waypoint 1, and we'll continue to discuss. What you're looking at now are the teams inside Mission Control Houston, the International Space Station flight control teams. Of course, teams on both on different areas of the United States here in Houston, and of course in Hawthorne, California, the teams here monitoring the International Space Station. Every position you see here staffed is monitoring a different component and contributing information and data and monitoring, making sure everything's good to the flight director. Flight Director Judd Friedling is leading the teams today in coordination with the mission director in Hawthorne, California, a joint operation indeed. The two flight control centers are working in tandem with the two spacecraft in flight in low Earth orbit. That's the International Space Station being controlled out of this room you see here in Houston, as well as the Dragon controlled from Hawthorne. You see the screens at the front of the room are a little bit dim. We're right now in an orbital nighttime as we continue to orbit the Earth 260 statute miles over the North Pacific Ocean.
I'm clear for Freedom.
And copy, Dragon. And for your awareness, we are going to proceed past waypoint 1, and then the ground will be commanding a hold at 180 meters in order to work some ISS solar array configuration.
We will hold at 180 meters, and be advised that in your last transmission we picked up an echo.
Copy, Dragon. Understand you're reporting an echo, and that's correct. The ground will be commanding a hold post waypoint 1.
For what it's worth, the echo just disappeared in that transmission.
We're getting views from inside the Dragon cabin. It was Michael Lopez Alegria, the voice from inside Dragon Freedom, commander of the Axiom crew. He's confirming what we did report and the flight teams did discuss, proceeding past waypoint 1 and commanding a hold.
Commanding a hold. See what they need to do for the solar panels
Teams
so they can squeeze
in
up in there, I'm going to
just
guess.
to make sure everything's in tip-top shape before continuing to press on.
Makes
Again,
sense.
We're in an orbital nighttime right now over the North Pacific Ocean. Expect a sunrise here at about 4:45 a.m. Central Time. Once the teams hold, we'll continue to keep in touch with the flight control teams.
Keep this on. I'm just going to take a break, guys.
On docking times and status of the crew. For now, we do have waypoint 1 and the trajectory converging on that mile marker just inside 5 minutes. Just as a recap, the plan is to proceed past waypoint 1, as the teams have agreed on. That's an approach 1 maneuver, just firing the Draco service, the service section Draco thrusters to push inwards on right alongside the docking axis. This is directly in front of the docking port. But there is sort of an imaginary line around there called the keep out sphere, which is about at the 180 meter mark. The plan right now is to proceed past waypoint 1 at 220 meters, proceed inwards to about 180 meters, and command a hold. From inside the Dragon cabin, you can see sort of the trajectory. When you look at these trajectories from the displays inside Dragon, what is being calculated in real time are different breakout maneuvers. But right now the plan is to proceed past waypoint 1 and go ahead and command that hold. You can sort of see, though it is in a slightly lower resolution, you can sort of see the docking light on the forward end of Dragon. It has this pulsing phenomenon, and as it pulses, is illuminating the International Space Station. What you're seeing is the forward end of the space station. So the docking port is coming into view as we're almost 3 minutes from that docking axis. It's the forward port, but the docking light itself is illuminating the outside of the station as we continue over in an orbital nighttime over the Pacific Ocean. Now we're listening into the flight control teams. Wanted to report some rationale. Again, we're proceeding past waypoint 1, about 2 minutes from now. This 10 minutes allows the Spartan console here in Mission Control Houston. Spartan is responsible for power and thermal monitoring of the space station systems, looking at some temperature fluctuations in the solar arrays, just wanting those to dampen out just a tad. And so we can expect a
Dragon
hold.
SpaceX on the big loop, noting approach 1 and soft capture ring extension will begin shortly, and then ground will command the hold ahead of 150 meters. And a reminder that manual impulsive retreat recovery is not permitted.
All SpaceX.
Crew Operations Resource Engineer in Hawthorne, California, reiterating the plan to the Axiom crew inside Dragon. Again, we're proceeding past waypoint 1 and holding just outside 180 meters. Right now, the plan is the Spartan is monitoring some temperature fluctuations on the ISS solar arrays. Should just be a couple of minutes. Right now, we're looking at approximately 10 to 15, though we'll monitor real time and provide data as we get more from the teams and they provide their assessment, just to make sure that everything's in tip-top shape, like we have been reporting, to go ahead and proceed into the keep-out sphere. But the teams are just looking for just a little bit more time to gather that data before giving the all clear to proceed inwards. Again, towards waypoint 2 is the next milestone, holding at just outside 180 meters. Once they proceed in, the next milestone will be waypoint 2. Teams will conduct a go, no-go poll on whether to go ahead and hold or proceed inwards again. We'll check in and continue to check in with the teams to monitor Dragon's progress for docking later this morning. And we pass through waypoint 1, holding for confirmation of that approach 1 performance. 214 meters in closing.
Houston Station, we see vehicle mode approach to align point moving to step 3.
Houston copies.
Continuing to listen into the loops here in Mission Control Houston, coordinating with the teams over in Mission Control Hawthorne.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop. The solar array configuration has been completed, so we will be proceeding with approach 1 and no hold.
Houston copies, no hold.
And right on time, the teams, instead of commanding that hold at about 180 meters, right at about the 185 meter mark, relaying that we are continuing on forward.
Dragon in the corridor, attitude as expected.
Houston copies.
From inside the International Space Station, Laurel O'Hara monitoring Dragon's approach with her, it's called Rendezvous Proximity Operations Panel. This is providing data to inside the International Space Station, reporting the same data that we're seeing on the ground. We're now inside 180 meters, proceeding inside the keep-out sphere. The next milestone will be waypoint 2. Teams will continue to assess the vehicle's performance throughout its progress inwards towards that next milestone, and conduct a go, no-go poll to proceed past that waypoint towards docking. That go, no-go poll expected to begin in approximately 6 minutes. They may elect to do it a little bit early, but everything proceeding even better than we were expecting. That monitoring of the ISS solar array seemed to resolve itself, so we're pressing inwards. Everything looking good here from inside Mission Control Houston, but again, we're not the only game in town. Mission Control Houston you see on the right, working in tandem with the teams on the left. With that, why don't we check in with Kate and John over in Hawthorne. Kate and John.
Thank you very much, Gary. You know, that was a great example of how you can hear things change dynamically in flight, and with proper training, flight controllers know how to assess their systems and their configurations and make a call on it and move forward.
Absolutely. They're the experts.
Exactly. Exactly. You know, and crew also has been training quite a bit, and in addition to their training for systems like that, they're also training for their research. So this crew in particular is going to be participating in over 30 different scientific efforts over the course of their 2 weeks on the orbiting laboratory. So let's go ahead and highlight 3 from each of the countries who are flying today. First up is the Italian research portfolio. The ISOC system, developed by the Italian Air Force, provides an updated space object catalog and state-of-the-art algorithms for space events.
Houston on the Big Loop, can you confirm you are ready for docking?
Station, we are ready for docking.
With that, at waypoint 2, Dragon will briefly pause to align for docking, then automatically resume approach.
Copy.
We had heard some good news there. We got we heard that the teams pulled go for docking. So excellent news for the AX-3 crew.
Yeah, exactly. All right, and with that, the ISOC command and control software utilize the Italian Air Force SSA, or Space Situational Awareness Center, as a European hub for assessing re-entry and fragmentation of space objects. The ISOC Services for ISS project is a proof of concept experiment aimed at demonstrating how, in future space missions such as cislunar or Martian, astronauts could be able to obtain near real-time conjunction analysis with limited support from Earth ground segments or even autonomously.
Dragon SpaceX on the Big Loop, soft capture ring extension is complete.
SpaceX freedom, we copy.
Good news there. That soft capture mechanism is what will make initial contact with the space station when Dragon is, close enough to touch the station.
And the Turkish Space Agency also has a broad range of scientific efforts for this mission, starting with Uzman. Algae have many properties that make them ideal organisms to support humans during long-duration spaceflight missions. Not only could they serve as a nutritional source, included in astronaut menus, algae could also remove carbon dioxide and produce oxygen for spacecraft environmental control systems, help regulate spacecraft temperatures, recycle certain wastes, and even act as a source of fuel. The data generated from this experiment will be used to advance the development of microalgal life support systems for space missions and could impact the design of future carbon dioxide capture, oxygen conversion, wastewater treatment systems, and provide fertilizer options for other agricultural crops grown in space. And also highlighting the scientific efforts from ESA and the Swedish Space Agency, let's start with MEMO-BC. This experiment aims to determine the direct and delayed post-flight effects on the neural stem cells, after long-term microgravity exposure, and investigate if the delayed effects are the result of genetic changes emerging during microgravity, or to be secreted components in the medium during flight.
Dragon Freedom SpaceX on the Big Loop. Please confirm that you are ready for final approach and visors are down. MCCX and Houston have pulled go for docking.
SpaceX freedom, confirm all 4 crew visors down. We're ready for docking.
Copy, Dragon, go for docking. Ground will be enabling approach shortly. And a reminder, once you're inside the crew hands-off point, retreat and breakout are not permitted.
Copy.
All All right, so there on your screen, on the right-hand side of your screen, is our Crew Operations and Resource Engineer, or SpaceX Core. For tonight, that is Seeley Grossman. We heard great news being given to the AX-3 crew. Their visors are now down, and the teams in Houston are ready for them to begin docking. So things are starting to get very exciting. This is basically what everything has been leading to for the last 36 hours. So we're very excited for the AX-3 crew to get closer and closer to what will be their home for up to the next 14 days. With that, let's go back over to Gary Jordan, who is at Johnson Space Center and tracking the final movements of Dragon Freedom.
Thank you, Kate. Right on time. We're about 2 minutes away from Waypoint 2's arrival. The teams here in Mission Control Houston have worked in tandem with the teams over in Hawthorne. Both teams have pulled go to proceed past Waypoint 2 for docking. Now in this scenario, instead of a commanded hold at the Waypoint 2 marker, which is 20 meters away from the International Space Station, the Dragon will make a brief pause at that Waypoint 2 mark, again 20 meters, only for a short couple of seconds, just to reconfigure its software to change for docking mode. So it'll pause there for just a brief couple of seconds and then proceed inwards for docking. That is coming up very shortly. We're just about 40 meters away from the International Space Station now and closing. It's an orbital nighttime, so we're only going to see the navigation lights and docking light blinking once we get views from the International Space Station. Teams here in Mission Control Houston monitoring from the perspective of the International Space Station and the joint operations with the teams over in Hawthorne. Flight control teams reporting that the rate of approach is as expected. Everything's going well. And again, the teams have pulled go to proceed past Waypoint 2, coming up in about 10 meters. We're inside 30 meters. Not only are the teams you see here monitoring the approach of Dragon Freedom and the Axiom crew inside to the International Space Station, we also have NASA astronauts Laurel O'Hara and Jasmine Mogbelli inside the International Space Station, monitoring the approach as well. Now getting some views of Dragon. In the orbital nighttime, you can see those service section Dracos firing to keep its attitude right on the docking axis and its range rate as expected. Green starboard light and red port light, navigation lights on the forward end of Dragon coming into view. Again, we are in an orbital nighttime, so it is a bit dark. Those specks you see in the frame are dead pixels from the radiation on the camera. Confirmed Waypoint 2 arrival. Dragon is now pausing and reconfiguring for its approach to the docking port.
Station Houston on the big loop. Drag is on final approach and is go for docking. Monitor per steps 5 and 6 and 1.102. Dragon approach and retreat monitoring.
Station copies. We see vehicle mode approach to docking port range decreasing.
We copy.
Waypoint 2 pause is over, and we're proceeding with final approach, now inside 18 meters from the International Space Station.
Copy.
Laurel O'Hara, NASA astronaut in the International Space Station, monitoring the approach as the vehicle is just 15 meters away from the International Space Station where she resides, seeing the Range rate, the rate of approach to dock with the International Space Station, being as expected inside 15 meters and closing. A little inside 13 meters, the range rate continues to decrease. That's as expected. Flight controllers are estimating just inside 3 minutes from contact with the International Space Station.
SpaceX Freedom is at 10 meters.
Copy 10.
Dragon Commander Michael Lopez Alegria confirming inside at 10 meters. Dragon continuing its approach as expected. We may see a brief handover, a loss of video for just a couple of seconds and regain it. There's a chance we'll have it continuously through this, but if we do lose it, we will expect to regain it back by the time of contact.
Five meters.
Copy 5 meters.
Inside 5 meters at the 2 meter mark, we may hear the call out chop, crew hands off procedure. At that point, the crew cannot command an abort. Everything looking good though. Inside 4 meters.
Meters.
Copy 2.
Loss of signal as expected.
Dragon SpaceX soft capture
Contact.
confirmed.
You heard that call out from the Crew Operations Resource Engineer in Hawthorne, California, 4:42 a.m. Central Time. Dragon Freedom has made contact and soft capture with the International Space Station as the two were flying together 262 statute miles over the South Pacific Ocean.
Ring retraction in progress.
We see it.
With a good soft capture, the ring is now retracting, pulling Dragon closer in with the International Docking Adapter aboard the International Space Station. This is part of a series of steps to formally hard mate the Dragon to the International Space Station after the soft capture ring is fully retracted and bringing the Dragon inwards. There is a series of 12 hooks that will secure Dragon to the International Space Station for what's called a hard dock. After that, the umbilical will be deployed, providing power and communications and data between the Dragon and the International Space Station. This is the docking sequence. Once the umbilical is extended and mated, the docking sequence is complete. Again, that soft capture time where Dragon made contact, and a soft capture with the International Space Station, 4:42 a.m. Central Time. Station and Dragon were 262 statute miles over the South Pacific Ocean. Ring retraction proceeding as expected, getting views from one of the cameras on the Japanese exposed facility on the forward end of the space station, seeing the starboard side of the Dragon. As we continue to monitor the progress of this ring retraction, now getting some sun illuminating the nadir or Earth-facing side, and now the whole thing of Dragon Freedom. Sun is rising over the South Pacific Ocean as Dragon and International Space Station continue to fly on a southeastern trajectory. Flight controllers monitoring the ring retraction and the alignment with the international docking adapter to proceed with driving those hooks. They'll be driven in 2 sets, gangs of 6, total of 12 hooks. They'll be driven again 6 at a time. The ready to hook indicators are starting to form green, showing some good alignment, still tracking.
And Dragon SpaceX on the big loop, ring retraction is complete. Docking sequence is holding for MCS reconfiguration.
Freedom, what's up?
Good milestone. The ring retraction is complete. We're seeing good alignment. This is quite a dance. It's not just the Dragon performing some of these maneuvers to secure Dragon to the International Space Station. International Space Station itself performing a series of attitude control configurations to prepare for the hard docking sequence. Once station's attitude control is configured properly, we'll go ahead and proceed towards the hard docking and driving those hooks. The teams you see here in Houston on the right and Hawthorne, California on the left work together to bring Dragon to the International Space Station. We're still going through the docking sequence to formally mate the Dragon with the International Space Station, seeing good alignment with that ring retraction, and looking forward to proceeding to that hard dock and driving those hooks. Again, 4:42 a.m. Central Time was when we made contact and soft capture with the International Space Station. Dragon Freedom coming more clearly into view.
Station Houston on the big loop, MCS configured, proceeding with hook driving.
Station copies.
Attitude control configured on the International Space Station side. We're just using the control moment gyros for this sequence. With the station in the proper attitude, we can proceed towards driving those hooks. Again, we're going to do them 6 at a time, total of 12 hooks. Once both set of hooks are traveling and have secured, that'll complete the hard docking sequence, and then we'll deploy that umbilical. The first set of 6 hooks are currently driving. We can expect the hooks to drive about 2 minutes apart from one another. Holistically, we're looking at about 4 minutes of driving hooks. Again, 6 at a time. Stand by for the hook's performance. But it should be just a few moments until we complete that hard dock. Again, that's not the end of the docking sequence. After a hard dock, we'll deploy the umbilical between the Dragon and the International Space Station. This provides data and power between the two vehicles. Dragon, up to this point, during its flight after launching on January 18th, has been relying on its batteries and the solar arrays you see on the trunk of the vehicle. That's the black part that you see on the space-facing side, gathering power as it continues to orbit the Earth. Once those umbilicals are deployed, they'll be relying on the station's power, gathering power from the station's solar arrays. Hooks continuing to drive, seeing a good seal on the International Docking Adapter interface. Again, those first set of hooks are continuing to drive. Teams are seeing a good set of first hooks. Those first set of hooks have driven and have closed. Now the second set of hooks are driving. Again, 12 in total. So the first 6 have been secured. The next 6 are driving. That'll complete the hard dock of Dragon to the International Space Station. One more step after that, deploying that umbilical. Again, we have a soft capture of Dragon Freedom to the International Space Station. That was at 4:42 a.m. Central Time. We're now in the hard dock sequence. 12 hooks are used to secure Dragon. The first set of hooks have driven,
Dragon,
and we just heard that second
hard capture is complete.
SpaceX Freedom, we copy.
So 12 hooks, all deployed, all securing Dragon for a hard dock to the International Space Station. One more step to complete the docking sequence, deploying that umbilical. In the meantime, with a hard dock that does secure the Dragon to the International Space Station, they don't have to be as careful with the loads imparting on the inside. Typically during this sequence, they have what's called an exercise constraint, so the astronauts on board station, all 7 of them, are not allowed to exercise during that time, so there's no oscillation, no vibration. They've just lifted that constraint for the crew inside so they can get on with their workout. In the meantime, we're still standing by for the deployment of the umbilical on Dragon to complete the docking sequence.
Houston Station on 2, we are stepping out of Dragon approach monitoring.
Houston copies and concurs.
Welcome to Space Station Axiom 3. Looking forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, Laura. We're excited to get started.
With all hooks driven, Laurel O'Hara and Jasmine Mogbelli inside the space station are relieved of their monitoring duties, welcoming the crew to the space station. The soft capture ring has been stowed, all 12 hooks are driven, and the umbilical is now deploying. We are almost done with the docking sequence.
And Dragon Freedom, this is SpaceX. Docking sequence is complete, and the ground will be enabling hardline power and comm connections shortly. You are go to doff your suits per procedure 4.012, and we'll go ahead and make sure cameras are external.
4.010 work.
And copy Dragon, just to note that's 4.012.
KLV 4.012.
And with that, Dragon Freedom and the Axiom Mission 3 crew inside has formally docked to the International Space Station. The docking sequence is complete. After completing a capture and soft dock at 4:42 a.m. Central Time, all 12 hooks have secured Dragon to the station. The umbilical has been deployed. Laurel O'Hara and Jasmine Mogbelli have been released of their duties. The crew inside is able to exercise. Inside the space station is able to exercise, and the crew inside Dragon is able to doff their suits or take off their suits. The dynamic portion of docking and the safeguard needed for those suits is complete. The Dragon crew, it will now doff their suits and prepare for entering the station in just about approximately an hour and a half. Maybe some change, but we're looking at a hatch opening approximately 6:30 a.m. Central Time. If they stick with the timeline, we'll continue to monitor and provide updates and continue our coverage of the Axiom Mission 3 crew's arrival to the International Space Station, but based on current planning, that is what we are planning for. After hatches are opened, the crew members of Expedition 70 will welcome the Axiom Mission 3 crew to the International Space Station, and the cadre of 11 will gather for a welcome ceremony to begin their 14-day stay, their journey aboard the International Space Station. Again, teams in control rooms on the International Space Station Flight Control Room on the right and SpaceX Flight Control team on the left in Hawthorne, California, working in tandem to bring the Axiom Mission 3 crew to the International Space Station, docking at 4:42 a.m. Central Time. Now, with the docking sequence complete, the crew and the teams will make steps to bring the Axiom Mission 3 crew inside the International Space Station. One of the primary things that will happen over the next hour and a half before the hatches are opened is there is a space in between the Dragon hatch and the International Space Station hatch called the vestibule, currently at vacuum. We need to bring that up to equalize the pressure between Dragon and the station, about what we find at sea level, 14.7 pounds per square inch. That process will take some time, introducing air and making sure there are no temperature fluctuations, and we're getting a good read to make sure there are no leaks as we methodically bring the pressure up from vacuum up to 14.7 psi.
SpaceX Freedom on the big loop, contact from the cabin mic.
And Dragon SpaceX, we've got you loud and clear on the cabin mic.
Thank you.
We'll hear these periodic check-ins from the crew as they make their way through the process of doffing or taking off their suits and getting ready to open up the hatches, configuring the inside of the Dragon cabin for eventual ingress and welcome into the International Space Station. Cabin mic being
Station
inside
Houston
the
on
Dragon,
the big loop
outside
for
the suit.
Laurel and PMA ingress.
On 2.
Hey, Laurel, we give you a go for 2.102, step 1.1, and step 2.2.
Copy. Go step 1.1 and 2.2.
Good copy.
Alert.
Now, from inside the International Space Station, you're hearing Laurel O'Hara repeating some of the steps on her end after taking on the job of monitoring the spacecraft's approach and docking to the International Space Station. She now moves on to the methodical steps of opening up the hatch and preparing the International Space Station for the entry of new crew members. There are several hatches she'll have to open and areas she'll have to prepare in order to welcome the crew. There are 2 hatches that she'll have to work with. First is the Node 2 forward hatch that has been currently closed through the docking operations. That just allows her and the International Space Station crew access to the pressurized mating adapter. It's really a channel to get us all the way down to what's called the A-Pass hatch. This is the hatch that on the other side is that vestibule currently at vacuum. So she'll be opening up those hatches and preparing the pressurized mating adapter. She'll put some covers on some of the hatches just to minimize bumps and hazards along the way so the crew can ingress safely into the International Space Station for hugs and handshakes later. If we stick with the timeline, we're expecting that hatch to open in just about an hour and a half, 6:30 a.m. Central Time. But again, we'll continue to monitor the crew
SpaceX
through
on
their
the
steps.
big loop. If desired, you can reference your procedure 4.400 for monitoring vestibule pressurization.
Copy 4.400.
It'll be Laurel O'Hara on the station side performing some of the steps for vestibule pressurization, but the crew operations resource engineer in Hawthorne reading up to the Axiom crew inside Dragon, which you see on your screen. They're able to monitor along as well. That vestibule is that important gap in between the Dragon hatch and the station hatch. Right now, At vacuum, it will take quite a bit to bring up to pressurization. 14.7 psi. It's a slow and methodical process.
Station on 2, node 2, forward hatch is open.
Houston copies.
Wasting no time, Laurel O'Hara has confirmed that from inside the International Space Station, that node 2 forward hatch is open. Again, that just allows Laurel some access to the pressurized mating adapter. This is the channel way that brings her to the A-pass hatch. Now, that hatch will not be opened until that vestibule is pressurized. So with access to the pressurized mating adapter, she'll be able to work through the steps to start the vestibule pressurization. Again, it's a methodical process, so from vacuum, it's brought up to a checkpoint at 5 pounds per square inch, and is once that pressure is monitored for just a bit and looks stable to make sure there are no initial leaks, they'll go ahead and introduce air into that vestibule to pressurize it to equalize with the International Space Station and Dragon at 14.7 psi. Meanwhile, inside the Dragon, Axiom crew is doffing or taking off their suits. They'll be changing into their garments and setting the Dragon cabin in such a configuration that it is ready for them to ingress the International Space Station. Laurel O'Hara getting a jump start on that vestibule pressurization, already starting some of the initial work, again, to bring that vestibule pressure up to 14.7 psi.
Houston Station on 2, A-pass equalization valve closed at 11:06.
Copy, 11:06.
Quick recap, Dragon Freedom and the AX-3 crew have arrived at the International Space Station, docking at 4:42 a.m. Central Time. Dragon has been hard docked and the docking sequence is complete. Umbilicals are mated and hooks are driven to secure Dragon to the International Space Station. Crew inside is doffing their suits and preparing for ingressing the International Space Station. It will take some time though. On the other side, on the International Space Station side, Laurel O'Hara is preparing the International Space Station and the vestibule in between the hatches of Dragon and Space Station to bring it up to pressure. She's already opened up the forward hatch on the Node 2. There's
Dragon
also another hatch.
On the big loop, ISS power connection is established and our vestibule leak check is in progress.
SpaceX Freedom, we copy.
That confirmation confirms that the link enabled by the umbilical between Dragon and International Space Station is providing good power, good data, looks secure. In addition, Laura O'Hara has again opened up that Node 2 forward hatch and has begun the vestibule pressurization. This is a methodical process, so the first step is to bring it up to about 5 pounds per square inch. And leave it there as a hold to make sure that it is not leaking. This is the leak check in its methodical process of bringing up to pressure. We're shooting for 14.7 pounds per square inch. That's what will equalize the vestibule between the station and Dragon. Currently enjoying pressures of what typically what we see here at sea level on Earth. Again, that vestibule pressurization leak check is underway. For those just joining, we are continuing our coverage of Axiom Mission 3 crew's arrival to the International Space Station. The teams are methodically working to pressurize the vestibule and open up the hatches to welcome the Axiom crew to the International Space Station. Quick recap, the crew arrived, the Axiom Mission 3 crew arrived at the International Space Station, making contact and soft capture at 4:42 a.m. Central Time. At the time, the Dragon and station were flying together 262 statute miles over the South Pacific Ocean. The soft capture ring retracted, bringing the Dragon in towards the International Docking Adapter, and after a good alignment, drove 12 hooks to secure Dragon tightly to the International Space Station for a hard dock. The umbilical was deployed between the Dragon and the International Space Station.
With you on the big loop.
Well, just wondering, with the delay in docking, do you have an update for the time of the events coming up, the joint events?
All right, Mike. Can't give you the best estimate right now. What we recommend is getting with the station crew and talking it over, and let us know when you're ready.
That's perfect. Thanks.
Station, we are waiting for your report that the leak check is complete.
Copy, Laurel. We have about 3 minutes left.
Copy.
This is Mission Control Houston, standing by, monitoring the chatter here and the progress of the vestibule leak checks and the crew's progress of welcoming the Axiom Mission 3 astronauts aboard the International Space Station. We're looking at about another minute.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop, just looking for a status on suit doffing, and if you've gotten into